In the Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council, a gathering of the most powerful and influential species from across the galaxy convened. The air hummed with tension, the atmosphere thick with the weight of their decisions. Towering, imposing figures of various shapes and sizes filled the seats, each representing an ancient race that held sway over the countless planets under the Council's rule. At the center of the room, a holographic display shimmered to life, casting a faint glow over the assembled dignitaries. "This, apex predator," one of the council members began, their voice an unsettling hiss, "is the culmination of our most advanced bioengineering." The speaker, a serpentine creature with scales that caught the light, slithered slightly forward. "No species, no force, has been able to tame it. It will be our ultimate weapon. A being with no equal." A low murmur of approval rippled through the assembly. The predator had been bred for war, an apex in every sense of the word. Its senses were sharper than any living being, its strength beyond measure. It had been designed not just to fight but to dominate, to eradicate any threat with brutal efficiency. No creature could rival its intelligence or cunning in battle. It was the perfect instrument of control. A large, crustacean-like member of the council clicked its mandibles in agreement. Once unleashed, it will crush all who oppose the council's will. Rebellious worlds will fall in line, and even the most defiant of species will kneel before us. The creature's eyes gleamed with ambition. They continued discussing the predator's features with a kind of reverence, almost as though the creature were some divine creation sent to solidify their control over the galaxy. The beings in the room, accustomed to exercising their power with impunity, felt invincible in its presence. For them, this predator was the answer to maintaining their supremacy. There was little disagreement. Why would there be? The council ruled with absolute authority, their decisions shaping the fate of entire systems. They had faced challenges before, rebellions, insurgencies, threats from rival factions, but nothing they couldn't handle. And now, with the apex predator at their disposal, even the faintest whispers of dissent could be crushed. It was then that a smaller, more inconspicuous member of the council, a creature with dark, beady eyes, raised the topic of humans. "What of the newcomers, the humans?" it asked, voice dripping with contempt. "They have yet to prove their worth to the council." The others barely acknowledged the question. The humans, after all, were recent arrivals to the interstellar stage. They had shown resilience, sure, but lacked the advanced technology or sheer numbers that other species boasted. To the council, they were little more than a minor species, a curiosity at best, a nuisance at worst. "They are primitive," one council member scoffed. "Barely worth mentioning. They will pose no threat. Let them think they are safe, for now. When the time comes, they too will bend to the will of the council, or be destroyed." The room echoed with quiet laughter. To these rulers of the galaxy, humans were nothing more than an afterthought, insignificant in the grand scheme of things. The focus remained on their prized creation, the apex predator. It was the key to maintaining their dominance, their secret weapon in case any species dared challenge their might. The hologram flickered again, displaying the creature's form, a massive, hulking beast with sinewy muscles and sharp claws that could tear through armor like paper. It was fearsome in every way. Each of the council members watched the display with satisfaction, their minds already filled with visions of victory. In their arrogance, they believed they had created the perfect enforcer, a creature that embodied their power and control over the galaxy. But in their hubris, they had overlooked one crucial detail, something they wouldn't realize until much later: humans were far more resourceful than they could ever imagine. For now, though, that thought did not cross their minds. The council felt secure in their position, smug in their belief that nothing could challenge their rule. The apex predator would ensure their continued dominance. Or so they thought. The apex predator was transported in a heavily fortified containment vessel, escorted by several high-ranking council guards. It was transferred to one of the council's testing grounds, a barren, controlled planet where they could measure its power without concern for collateral damage. The atmosphere was electric with anticipation, every council member eager to witness the apex predator's full capabilities. This was their ultimate weapon, the culmination of years of development, and today they would see it unleashed. From the safety of the control room, the council members observed through high-definition monitors as the predator was released from its containment. The creature emerged slowly, its enormous, muscular frame radiating raw power. Its eyes, cold and calculating, scanned the landscape as if it could sense every living thing for miles. A low growl rumbled from its throat, a warning to anything foolish enough to cross its path. To begin the tests, several species of test creatures were released into the environment, each one specifically chosen for its combat prowess or lethal nature. The first was a reptilian beast known for its razor-sharp fangs and territorial aggression. It barely had time to react before the predator lunged, its speed and strength overwhelming. With one swipe of its claws, the creature was torn apart, its body crumpling into the dirt. The council members nodded approvingly. This was exactly what they had expected. One by one, more formidable creatures were released, each more dangerous than the last, but none stood a chance. The predator dispatched them with terrifying efficiency, adapting to each opponent's style of attack, crushing them with ease. Its movements were fluid, its instincts perfect, as though it was designed purely for destruction. Satisfied, the council believed they had seen all they needed. The apex predator was everything they had promised themselves it would be, a living weapon, untouchable and unstoppable. They felt a surge of pride, convinced no being in the galaxy could survive an encounter with this monster. That was when the human arrived. Seemingly unaware of the ongoing test, a lone human, a researcher, or perhaps an explorer, entered the testing grounds. They appeared calm, oblivious to the danger that surrounded them. The council members' eyes widened in disbelief. What was this human doing here? How had they gotten past the perimeter? It didn't matter. They were about to witness firsthand what happened, and a human faced an apex predator. The predator turned its gaze toward the newcomer, its attention shifting immediately. Its nostrils flared as it detected the human, sensing a new and unfamiliar presence in its domain. For a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath as the predator began to move. Slow, deliberate steps, its massive frame crouching low, stalking its prey. In the control room, the council members leaned forward, waiting for the inevitable outcome. The human had no weapons, no armor, no means of escape. It was as though they were walking toward their death, completely unaware of the beast that was about to rip them apart. But the human did something that none of them could have expected. Instead of running, instead of panicking, the human approached the predator. Calm. Measured. Unfazed by the towering, deadly creature before them. They showed no sign of fear, no indication that they understood the sheer lethality of the being that was now closing in on them. To the council, it was madness. Sheer, suicidal madness. The predator hesitated, confused by the human's lack of reaction. It circled slowly, studying this strange being that was unlike any creature it had faced before. Every other test subject had fought or fled. But this one stood still. It was as though the human was daring the creature to make the first move. Tension filled the control room. The council members waited for the predator to strike, for the inevitable outcome of this encounter. But nothing happened. The human raised a hand, as if greeting the predator. There was no aggression in their movement, no challenge in their stance. Just calm, quiet confidence. The predator stopped, its predatory instincts seemingly dulled by the human's unexpected behavior. It sniffed the air, inching closer, still uncertain. The council watched in disbelief as the creature, the most dangerous being in the galaxy, was now mere feet away from the human. A ripple of confusion ran through the room. This was not how the apex predator was supposed to behave. This was not how any living being was supposed to behave in the presence of such a creature. And yet, here they were, witnessing the impossible. The human remained motionless, waiting as the predator loomed above them. The council could hardly believe their eyes. How long could this tension hold before something, anything, snapped? The apex predator took one final step forward, bringing itself face to face with the human. And still, no fear. Just calm acceptance. The predator stood mere inches from the human, its massive form casting a shadow over them. Its breath came in slow, deep huffs, nostrils flaring as it caught the scent of the being before it. Muscles rippled beneath its thick hide, ready to pounce, yet the human remained unmoved. The council watched in horrified fascination, every second dragging out as they anticipated the inevitable attack. But the human did the unimaginable. Without a shred of hesitation, the human raised their hand and extended it toward the apex predator. It was a simple, almost casual gesture, one that would have seemed appropriate if they were meeting a friendly animal, not the deadliest creature in the galaxy. The council members could hardly believe what they were seeing. This was not bravery, it was madness. The predator froze, eyes narrowing as it studied the outstretched hand. Its massive head lowered, sniffing at the human's fingers. Tension hung in the air, thick and unbearable, as the council members leaned forward, waiting for the creature's violent response. But there was no attack. No snarl of rage. Instead, the predator's aggressive stance began to soften. The human remained still, their hand unwavering, showing no fear as the beast's hot breath washed over them. For a moment, it seemed as though time itself had stopped. The council chamber was silent, each member transfixed by the impossible scene unfolding before their eyes. Then, to their utter shock, the apex predator pressed its snout against the human's hand, nuzzling them gently. The council erupted into chaos, their disbelief palpable. How could this be happening? This creature, designed to be the ultimate weapon, the embodiment of untamable savagery, was now responding to a simple touch with the docility of a domesticated pet. The human's fingers moved slowly, stroking the beast's rough skin. A low rumble emanated from the predator's chest, a sound that could only be described as a purr. The council members, once confident in their knowledge of the creature's nature, were dumbfounded. This was beyond their comprehension. No species had ever survived an encounter with the predator, let alone tamed it. A council member slammed their fist onto the table, shouting accusations of trickery. This is impossible. A human, of all things, cannot control that creature. But the proof was right in front of them. The predator, once a terrifying force of nature, had become calm, almost serene in the human's presence. The human continued to pet the creature, running their hand along its powerful neck. The predator leaned into the touch, its immense form now relaxed, its earlier aggression completely evaporated. It was as if the beast had forgotten its nature, lulled into submission by the simple, gentle act of the human. The council members were in uproar. Shouts of confusion, outrage, and disbelief filled the room as they struggled to make sense of what they were witnessing. How could this primitive species, this insignificant race, achieve what no other being in the galaxy had? It was inconceivable. The predator's body language had changed entirely. It no longer stalked or threatened. Instead, it followed the human with an almost playful demeanor, its once terrifying presence reduced to that of an obedient companion. The beast that had been bred for war, for destruction, now acted as if it had found a master it was content to serve. The council's once smug confidence crumbled. The apex predator, their ultimate weapon, had been tamed not through force, but through kindness. And it was a human who had done it. A species they had barely acknowledged, a race they had deemed weak and irrelevant. Now, they were forced to reconsider everything they thought they knew. The human had not only survived the encounter but had transformed it, rendering the apex predator powerless through nothing more than an outstretched hand. And as the predator followed the human, docile and calm, the council could only watch in stunned silence. For the first time, they realized that perhaps they had underestimated the humans, drastically. The council chamber was in chaos. The sight of the apex predator, once a feared weapon of mass destruction, now calmly following a human like a loyal companion, had shattered the carefully crafted confidence of the Galactic Council. Voices rose in outrage, confusion, and disbelief, filling the room with accusations and frantic demands for answers. "How is this possible?" one of the council members shouted, slamming their fist on the table. "This creature is untamable. No species has ever survived an encounter, let alone this." Another alien, one with a metallic sheen to their skin, seethed in anger. What sort of trickery is this, human? What technology are you using to manipulate the beast? Others remained speechless, struggling to process the impossibility of what had just unfolded. The apex predator had been designed to strike fear into the hearts of all who opposed the council. Now, it looked like a mere animal, docile and tame in the presence of the human who had not only survived but seemingly conquered the creature without lifting a finger. The human stood calmly in the midst of the uproar, unaffected by the council's anger and disbelief. They let the outbursts continue for a moment before raising a hand, gesturing for silence. Slowly, the chaos died down, though the tension in the air was still thick. All eyes were now fixed on the human, waiting for some kind of explanation. "It's not what you think," the human began, their voice steady, unshaken by the gravity of the moment. "There's no trickery. No manipulation. What you're seeing is simply a different approach." The council members exchanged skeptical glances. "A different approach?" one of them sneered. "You expect us to believe that?" The human nodded. "You've all treated this predator as a weapon, something to be feared, controlled, dominated. But I didn't see it that way." They glanced at the creature, still calm and obedient at their side. "I treated it with respect. Like a living being, not an object of war." Another wave of murmurs passed through the council. "Respect," an incredulous voice called out. "This creature was designed to kill. How can respect possibly tame something like that?" The human smiled slightly. "Because fear and dominance only breed more fear and aggression. It's universal. Every species, no matter how different, has basic instincts. I recognize those in this predator." They paused, letting the words sink in. "I didn't treat it like a threat. I approached it like I would a frightened animal, cautious, respectful, non-threatening. Animals, no matter how dangerous, can sense that." The council members looked between themselves, some still unconvinced, others visibly grappling with this new perspective. The human continued. "I picked up on its body language. The way it moved, the way it watched me. It wasn't just looking for a fight. It was also uncertain, confused. You see, this predator wasn't responding to me with mindless aggression. It was waiting to see what I would do. And when I showed no fear, when I didn't act like prey or predator, it responded in kind." The council chamber fell silent. The human's explanation was simple, yet it carried an undeniable weight. It wasn't some advanced human technology or weaponry that had tamed the apex predator, it was a deeper understanding of behavior, an empathy that transcended species. "You approached it like a pet?" one council member asked, almost incredulously. The humans shook their head. "Not a pet. Like an equal. Like a being that deserves understanding. And because of that, it didn't see me as a threat. It recognized that I wasn't going to harm it, and it responded with trust." The council members were stunned. They had always assumed power came from fear, control, and brute strength. Yet here was a human who had just demonstrated that power could also come from insight, empathy, and adaptability, traits they had never associated with such a primitive race. "This is absurd," one of the more arrogant council members growled. "You're telling us that your species can simply charm its way through the galaxy? That you can walk up to any threat, no matter how dangerous, and just understand it?" The human shrugged. "Not always. But humans are adaptable. We don't see things in black and white, predator or prey. We look for opportunities to connect, to understand. And that's what makes us different from other species. We don't rely on strength alone." For a moment, there was a pause. The weight of the human's words hung in the air, forcing the council to reconsider their long-held assumptions. They had dismissed humanity as insignificant, weak, incapable of contending with the galaxy's more advanced civilizations. Yet this encounter had revealed something far more profound. Humans possessed a kind of mastery that went beyond physical dominance. It was a mastery over the mind, over fear itself. One of the council members, a being with a crystalline form, spoke up quietly. So, humans are not dangerous because of their strength, but because of their ability to understand, to adapt. The human nodded. Exactly. It's not always about being the most powerful or the most feared. Sometimes, it's about knowing how to approach a situation from a completely different angle. The council members exchanged uneasy looks. They had underestimated the humans. Their species wasn't a threat in the traditional sense, but in a galaxy where brute force was the norm, the ability to think differently, to connect, to tame the untamable, that was a power the council had not anticipated. And now, they would have to reckon with it. The council chamber was a storm of whispered debates and uneasy silence. Some council members wore expressions of deep unease, their confidence shaken by the events they had just witnessed. Others were grudgingly impressed, their once dismissive attitudes toward humans replaced with an unsettling realization. The apex predator, once the symbol of the council's supremacy, now seemed far less imposing. If a human could tame it with nothing more than a gesture of respect, what else were humans capable of? The council's highest-ranking members convened in a hurried discussion, exchanging thoughts on how this unexpected development would impact the delicate balance of power in the galaxy. There was no question that the apex predator, once their ultimate weapon, no longer carried the same weight. The fact that a human, a species they had overlooked, could neutralize it so easily was more than a shock. It was a threat to their sense of superiority. "We must reevaluate our position," one council member said quietly. "Humans are not what we believed." A more aggressive voice countered, "This doesn't change everything. It's an anomaly, nothing more." But even those clinging to their previous beliefs couldn't deny what they had witnessed. The apex predator, bred for destruction and war, had followed the human out of the chamber like an obedient creature. The sight had shaken the very foundation of what the council thought they understood about control, power, and fear. The human, standing quietly beside the predator, said nothing as the council deliberated. They had made their point without the need for further explanation. Their presence was enough. The other species in the room, those who had once regarded humans with indifference, now viewed them with a mix of newfound respect and a quiet, gnawing fear. This event had irrevocably changed how humans were perceived. They were no longer the newcomers to the galactic stage, fumbling for recognition. They had just demonstrated something far more important than military might. They had shown a mastery of instincts, of empathy, of subtle control, qualities that made them far more dangerous than anyone had realized. The apex predator, once thought to be the ultimate instrument of fear, was now rendered less significant in light of what the humans had demonstrated. And with that, the balance of power within the Galactic Council shifted. Not outwardly, not in an official decree, but in the unspoken understanding that humans could no longer be dismissed as a primitive species. They were something else entirely. As the council members continued to debate, the human protagonist turned to leave, the apex predator walking calmly beside them. Heads turned as they exited the chamber, a quiet but undeniable symbol of the new reality the council now had to face. No words were needed. The message was clear: humans were not just a part of the galactic community. They had defied expectations in a way that no other species had, and in doing so, they had set themselves apart. The council, shaken by the implications, knew that this incident would have far-reaching consequences. The galaxy had shifted in ways they couldn't yet fully comprehend. Whether this shift would lead to conflict or alliances remained to be seen. But one thing was certain: humans had just shown that their influence extended beyond physical strength. They possessed a kind of power that was far more difficult to predict, and far more dangerous. As the doors closed behind the human and their now-tamed predator, the council members sat in uneasy silence, aware that the future would be shaped by this moment. The balance of power had changed, and humanity would play a pivotal role in whatever came next.